Welcome to the channel. I'm Hayes. I talk movies all day. Sometimes I'll talk about games, so subscribe right now if you want to be entertained. And today I want to talk about Blade. Apparently Blade, the upcoming Blade movie starring Marhershala Ali, is not going to be R-rated. Apparently it's going to be PG-13, or let me say this, it's looking like it's going to be PG-13. It's not exactly confirmed fully yet, but from what was discussed with Kevin Feige, it seems like that's the way they're going. So apparently Marvel's new Blade might be PG-13 after all, and fans are to me. So what's happened is that Kevin Feige was talking about the movies coming out with Disney acquiring a Star platform and some of the more adult-themed movies going on that. And he said, when questioned about more mature content on the platform, I think we target everything we're doing now for kids and adults. So I think your question is, more adults or R-rated? You know, other than Deadpool, which has already established itself as a certain genre and a certain rating that we've already said we would not mess with when we start working with Deadpool, which we have. Other than that, we've not ever encountered a story or storyline or character's journey that's a PG-13, or the tone or the ratings that we've been using up to this point has prevented us. We've never been held back by it. If we ever were, then certainly there could be a discussion to be had now that there are other outlets like Hulu, like Star, but that just hasn't been the case yet. We've been able to tell all the kinds of stories we wanted with the tonality and the rating structure that we have now. And some people have noted that they have already begun work with the Blade movie, so it looks like Blade, the upcoming Blade movie, is not going to be an R-rated movie. And as this article says, and fans and also news, there's been some pretty interesting responses to the news there. But here's the thing, now that we know that, the question is, does Blade need the R rating? I mean, sure, we'd all like the R rating, I would like the R rating, but does it need the R rating? And that's what we're going to try and discuss today. But before I do that, though, let me just mention this real quick, because I did come across this article as well. Wesley Snipes making a Blade Killer movie to rival MCU's Blade. So Wesley Snipes is not going to be involved in the new Blade movie. Looks like he's just saying, hey, you know, good luck to you guys, but I'm gonna do my own thing. And he's referring to it as a Blade Killer movie. In fact, he uses a line here, apparently he's quotes to saying, we did white belt action in Blade, now we're going to do black belt action. And also says in the article somewhere that it's going to have like time travel and shape shifting. So it looks like, or at least it sounds like, they're going for some kind of sci-fi fantasy adventure type action movie, which sounds right up my alley. That sounds like my exact cup of tea, quite frankly. So yeah, whatever this turns out to be, God willing, I'll be seeing it. But big up to Wesley Snipes for doing this. Alright, but anyway, so yeah, does Blade need the R rating? So first of all, let's look at what an R rating is. So according to Michigan State University, R restricted, children under 17 require accompanying parent or adult guardian. This rating means the film contains adult material such as adult activity, harsh language, intense graphic violence, drug abuse, and nudity. Effectively what it's saying is that for it to get an R rating, it contains adult activity, harsh language, intense graphic violence, drug use, and nudity. Not necessarily all of those things, but if it contains those things in the appropriate amount, it's going to get an R rating. And if you come over to this page, this is IMDb Blade parent guides page, just looking through why it got the R rating. Yeah, I'm not going to read it all, but I think you can probably see, yeah, it deserved the R rating for the first Blade movie back in 1998. It's pretty much earned its stripes. So this is what Blade established itself as back in 1988, and then Blade 2 and 3 are going along the same path. But what's happening now is that it could be a PG-13 movie. So what does a PG-13 mean? Well, PG-13, according to the Michigan State University, parents strongly cautioned as some material may be inappropriate for children under 13. This rating is a stronger caution for parents that content included may not be appropriate for children under 13 or preteen ages. This may include stronger language, extended violence or sexual situations, and drug use. Okay, so if the new Blade movie is going to be a PG-13 film, then what needs to change? Now I'm just going to use this first Blade movie as a template. Of course they're going to do a different movie anyway, but what in terms of, you know, what Blade did originally would have to change. So if you had to take the original Blade movie and cut it down to get a PG-13 rating, what would need to go? That's what we're going to try and do today, and that hopefully can give us an idea of what might be happening with the new Blade movie if it gets a PG-13 rating. So as far as things like sex and nudity goes, I feel like the first Blade movie wouldn't have to change that much because it's not really a sexy movie in that sense. There's no like nudity or anything like that. So a woman is briefly seen performing oral sex on a man while he is kissing another woman simultaneously, nothing explicitly shown. Yeah, it's very brief. You don't actually see anything. You don't see no cocks. It's just like somebody's head in their lap. I feel like you could probably get away with that in a PG-13. Maybe, you know, they blur it a little bit, or maybe you just see the top of the woman's head rather than how the shot was done in the movie. I don't know, but I feel like you could probably get away with that. Maybe. I mean, it sounds worse than it is. Reading it here makes it sound worse than it is. It's really not. As it's nothing explicit is shown, you really don't see anything, and it's such a brief scene you barely notice it. So yeah, I feel like as far as sex and nudity goes, you probably don't have to change much, if anything. Even going down to like the swearing and profanity, you probably don't have to change much. Like, well, actually, let me rephrase that. You probably have to change these words much, like the shit and the dick. You could probably leave that the same. Maybe cut it down a little bit, if anything, but I don't think it could be a massive change there. This, you might have to change a bit though. 44 times the F word was used. You're probably going to have to change that a little bit. I think I heard somewhere that PG-13 has a limit of 1 use of the F word. So at least 43 of these words are going to have to be changed into something else. Have to rewrite those lines a little bit. Alcohol, drugs, you could probably leave pretty much the same. Maybe minor changes here and there. There's no like drug abuse or anything like that. Maybe you don't show it as much, but you know, nothing really, I don't think it's anything that's going to massively affect the movie in any great way. But as you might have already guessed, what really changes is the violence, because that's really what Blade was kind of known for. And the real thing that got it that R rating was the violence. It is a pretty violent movie, you know. I'm going to read a few of these. So the protagonist is locked in an Iron Maiden-like device, and his wrists are cut by blades. Blood pours from his wrists and fills the screen explicitly. So yeah, you're probably gonna have to change that a little bit. Like maybe just show him going inside the Iron Maiden, and you know, show it shutting down, and then maybe that's about it. You don't necessarily show like the cuts or anything like that. You maybe show some of the blood, but maybe not fill up the screen too much, you know. So yeah, you're probably gonna have to change that and a bunch of these as well. Numerous bloody shootouts there. You're probably gonna have to change that a little bit. Maybe not as many, maybe not as bloody. So we just wrote here, not for anyone disgusted by gore. Yeah, that's pretty spot on, I reckon. It's not the goriest movie, by the way. If you're looking for gory movies, Blade is definitely not the goriest movie. There are plenty of movies far more gorier than Blade, but that's another video. Anyway, several explosions. You could probably leave the explosions, I imagine, pretty much the same. I don't think you've got to change the explosions. You could probably leave that the same. The fights you could probably leave pretty much the same as well. The punching, the kicking, I think you could leave those as they are. But it's more like the blood, I think, you have to change. Some of the cuts, as in body cuts, like decapitations, you could have to change those quite a bit. I don't know if you have to change every single one of them. You could probably have maybe 1 or 2 here and there, but I think you are taking out quite a lot. Maybe editing it differently as well, so that it implies that their head is cut off, but you don't actually see their head get cut off, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, quite a significant part of the movie would either have to be cut out or edited differently. So yeah, we are looking at pretty much a different movie at this point, you know. It is not the same at all, like not even close. But then the question still remains, does Blade need the R rating? So let's have a look at this real quick. This is 7 PG-13 movies that should be R rated, and I found this by searching most violent PG-13 movies, and this is one of the results that came up. And as you can see, you got the Dark Knight right at the top there, you got Jaws there, and you know, let's be honest, there's some pretty cool violent scenes in Jaws. Dark Knight, you know, that's the whole scene where the Joker's getting punched up. Let's not pretend that wasn't a cool scene. Not a bloody scene, sure, but it's still a pretty cool scene. Taken, come on now, come on. I've not seen Austin Powers, so I won't comment on that. Drag Me to Hell was pretty gory. I was actually surprised when I saw this on this. I didn't even realize. I don't always check the ratings. You get to a point in life where you don't bother check ratings anymore because you're old enough to see everything anyway. But I was surprised to see this on the list. So it was actually a PG-13 movie. It's a pretty gory movie. It really is. If you've not seen Drag Me to Hell, as the guy said about Blade, not to be watched by anyone disgusted by gore, that applies to this movie as well. Drag Me to Hell is a pretty gruesome movie. Spawn, I saw Spawn a long time ago. I haven't seen it for a while. I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I do remember some violence in there, some gore I think as well. But if you have a better memory of Spawn, then you can let me know. Live Free Die Hard, let's not talk about this piece of crap. Sucker Punch I have not seen, but according to this down here, it says Sucker Punch is the kind of movie whose rating makes you think that MPAA must have fallen asleep during a screening. Exceedingly grim film from director Zack Snyder. Apparently it involves a lobotomy and a brothel asylum as well. So yeah, maybe, maybe. But I won't comment too much because like I said, I haven't actually seen it. And another list over here. There's another website I found. Violent PG-13 movies. Which ones are the bloodiest? And we've got Sucker Punch again. We got Man of Steel. You know, to be honest, Man of Steel, I didn't think Man of Steel was particularly violent, but then again, it does have, I mean, there's definitely one scene that I can think of that stood out, and I won't say it because it's a pretty big spoiler if you've not seen the movie, but there's definitely one scene that stood out amongst the other scenes, but generally, I'd say the PG-13 was probably pretty accurate in that. Got Terminator Salvation as well. Personally, I didn't think this one was too violent, but then again, there's quite a lot of shooting, explosions and action going on. The Dark Knight again. The Lone Ranger, I've not seen a Lone Ranger, so I won't comment too much on that. But the point is, it does seem to be a little bit of leeway when it comes to violence and PG-13 rated movies. So the PG-13 rated Blade movie might not necessarily be the death knell that people think it is. I mean, I don't think we're talking about going from, say, like what it did with the RoboCop movies to what it did with the RoboCop cartoon. Like, I don't think the difference is going to be that different. So, does Blade need the R rating? That's a question we've got to try and answer right now. So I would say, as far as things like the story, the plot, and maybe just the overall kind of theme to it, you don't need the R rating. I think you can pretty much make the same movie story and plot and everything else and that kind of thing within the PG-13 parameters. What really changes is the violence. The violence is going to be completely different. Well, maybe not completely different, but certainly noticeably different, and as such is going to create a different experience. I don't necessarily think it's going to make the movie terrible. I think you can still make a good solid movie that has that mature feel to it within the PG-13 rules, but it is going to be a different movie. And that point, it just pretty much comes down to personal preference. Like, do you have to have the explicit violence in order to enjoy a film? Or can you still enjoy a movie that is violent, but not necessarily explicitly violent? Now, as somebody who does consider themselves to be a fan of excessively and unnecessarily violent and gory films, I can say that I can still enjoy a movie that isn't explicitly violent if it's still a good movie. I think when it comes down to it, whether it's rated G for guidance or NC-17, if it's a good movie with a good story that's engaging and draws you in and can tell a compelling tale, then you can still gain something out of it regardless of where the film is rated. Now that said, it's still pretty damn cool when you've got the explicit violence in there. So, does Blade need the R rating? No, it does not. But it'd be pretty cool to have one. But in the end, whatever happens with the upcoming Blade movie, hopefully it just doesn't suck, because then nobody's happy at all. So let's not do that, guys. Let's not do that, okay? Okay, but that's what I think of Blade and the PG-13 rating. What do you think of Blade and the PG-13 rating? Let me know down below, and while you're there, be sure to like, subscribe, and drop a suggestion if you don't mind.